All right, guys. So section 5.2, we're going to actually split into today and then the other part of it on Monday because they're kind of two opposites of each other. Yes. I don't remember what the IXLs are. I think it is. Do you have your paper? No. You're going to want to make sure they're in the basket over there. Yep, K9 is Monday's part. Okay, so for today, we have factoring a polynomial. Do we know how to factor? You should know how to factor by now. Finding the zeros of a polynomial. Can you find the zeros or find the answers? If you have factored it, do you know how to solve them? Yes. And then Monday, we're going to do the write a polynomial from its zeros. So in other words, today we're going to focus on here's the polynomial, here's the equation, factor solve, which we know how to do. And then on Monday, I'm going to say here's all the answers. Where did it come from? And you have to put them back and come back with the original problem. Okay? So we're going to work it both directions. Don't make that face. It's really not that bad. Okay. So solving a polynomial by factoring. I wrote down your steps, but you guys know how to do this. So first, factor out GCFs if you have one. Factor the remaining. It's going to be quadratic at that point because at this point, all we know how to do is solve quadratic. So once you pull out a GCF, it will be quadratic, x squared left over. Factor that, set them equal to 0, and solve. Right? We know how to do this. If baby brother, if x is a factor, so you pulled out an x, what do you know is an answer? 0 is. If baby brother has an x in it, 0 is one of your answers. Okay. So up here, first thing, see how there's a y here? Can I set it equal to 0? Yeah, that's the first thing we're going to do. So x cubed minus 2x squared minus 15x equals 0. Now the y equals just allows me to graph it. Which, can we graph these? Yes, we know how to graph them. All right, so factor, do I have a GCF? X. So pull out the x. X squared minus 2x minus 15. Notice we're down to quadratic. Everything that we have factored up to this point has been quadratic. Later in this chapter, we'll get into how to solve cubic, how to solve quartic, and bigger and better things. Okay, so we'll get there eventually. And then we can factor this further. Last one's negative. Plus and minus. Options for A. Options for C. Which one's negative? The 5. Because I want a positive 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Okay, so then first, before I keep going, how many answers should this problem have? The original problem is x to the third. I should have 3 answers. Does baby brother give me an answer this time? Yeah, there's an x there. So x equals 0, there's one answer. Then I have x plus 3 equals 0. And I have x minus 5 equals 0. And then solve them. Yep. So x equals negative 3. And x equals positive 5. Yeah, you can put them all together. If you just want to write, because again, I know a lot of you don't show all this work, and I'm going to stop showing it. But you could just write 0, comma, negative 3, comma, 5. Yeah, you can just write it all together. Grab your graphing calculators for me. Do you remember how to clear the memory? Close. Second plus 7, 1, 2. That'll clear your memory. Because again, you never know what the person before you, what on earth they typed in there. That wasn't 10 or 15 minutes. That was quick. All right, so in your graphing calculators, I want you to graph this original equation. So I'm going to hit your y equals. Now, be very careful when you're typing this in, because you're going to have to hit your caret button to pop that up to an exponent to put in the 3. Notice where your cursor still sits. Yeah, hit the arrow to drop that back down, okay? You have to hit y equals and then type this in. Again, look at what you're typing in. Don't put all of this as an exponent, because that's what a lot of people have a tendency to do. And then hit graph for me once you get done with that. Shouldn't have to move your graph. No. Hold on. Let me try to pull mine up. Oh, there it goes. Hold on. I'll type it in so we can all see it. Okay, so y equals, clear out what I got going in there. So x cubed, again, for those of you who may not know, there's your, right here on the right-hand side, there's your caret button. Your cursor is up there as an exponent. So just hit the right arrow, it'll drop it back down. Minus 2x squared. Nothing's worse when you get typing and then you look up and you're like, ah, crap, everything's an exponent. Because you forgot to move it. I've done it many times. All right, when we hit graph, oh, I have a funky one, hold on. Remember Zoom 6? We'll flip your window back to normal. Yeah, I didn't clear my memory. Yeah, we were playing with that, like crazy numbers. There we go. Now, as far as, okay, I can't see the vertices, I can't see those, but what was the point of this I was hoping you to look at? Where does it cross the x-axis? 0, -3, and 5. What did we just solve? Oh, there's that connection. It's there. Yeah, it crossed at 0, -3, and 5. Those are the exact answers that we just found here. Yay! Connections made. Yes. It's cool, right? I think it's cool. I know, and he's cute. I love him. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Don't graph it yet, okay? Don't graph it. So find the zeros of the function and then sketch a graph. So if I ask you to sketch a graph, am I looking for absolute precision? No, I just want a rough idea. All right, so first we'll set it equal to 0. And then what's the first thing we look for in factoring? Greatest common factor, which is just an x. So we have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Now that I'm down to a quadratic, I will try to factor further. Signs? Options for A? C? Which one's positive? Okay, so then if we solve, we know x equals, does baby brother give me an answer? Yep, so that's 0. And this gives me, and then the last one, 2.
Yeah, is this like, is this, it's like,
No, you're fine. I mean, this is like what we did last chapter, right? This is just factoring.
So is this like, it's all going to be every time?
I mean, you always look for a GCF. Yep, and then you go right to pulling out your 2 parentheses. Yep. All right, now before we look at the graphing calculator, it asked me to sketch a graph, meaning I just want like a random kind of like an idea of what it looks like. So go back to what we learned yesterday. Thank you. So if we look at what we learned yesterday about end behavior, go back to your problem. It's a cube. That is odd. So what kind of shape does it have? Squiggly, which direction? Squiggly up, because that's positive. So I know roughly my end behavior is going to look like this, right? Rough idea? Okay. Do you know where it crosses the x-axis? Okay, so let's put points there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -5, I have a 0, and a 2. So I know it will go through those points, and I know my ends look like that. So could you draw me a rough sketch of what it kind of looks like? Yeah. I know it's going to start at the bottom, it's going to go up through that point, it's going to come through this one, and back up through that one. It's a rough idea what it looks like. What part did I not know? Good. I don't know how high or how low it went, right? But if it says to draw a sketch, that's fine. I drew a rough idea. I kind of know what it looks like. Let's go ahead and graph it and see what it really does look like. How close was I? Off? Not even. I bet it was somewhat close. So x cubed plus 3x squared minus 10x. Did it go through the points I said it was going to go through? Yeah. It went through the points I said. Does it have the same end behavior, squiggly up? It's got a squiggly up look to it. Granted, it looks like it went a little higher than mine did, and maybe just a slightly lower than mine went, but was it a rough sketch? Yeah. Which is kind of cool though, right? Just by doing that, you guys know roughly what the graph looks like, which is kind of cool. Okay, let's come back to this. All right, so let's practice just finding the zeros. Okay, find the zeros of each function. GCF here, I'm going to be lazy, guys, and write equals 0 here. You guys cool with that? All right. GCF? I'm like, 0? That's not a very good GCF. All right, so x squared minus 13x plus 36. All right, down to quadratic. Let's try to factor further. Signs? Both minus. Options for A. So 1 and 1 or x and x. All right, C's got many options there. 9 and 4, good. All right, 9 times 4 is 36. 9 and 4 is going to give me the 13 I want in the middle. Does baby brother give me an answer? Yes, X marks the spot, right? He gives me an answer of 0. And then I get, what are my other answers? 9 and 4. If I asked you to give me a rough sketch, I know I didn't put it on here, just to make a little more practice, I know it's going to cross where? 0, 9, and 4. Squiggly up, squiggly down, smiley, sad face. Squiggly up, because it's odd and positive. So squiggly up going through those. I can draw a rough sketch. I have no idea how high or low that actually goes. All right, but I can get a rough sketch of it. You just looked at what most of your homework is tonight. Can you factor and solve for the answers? Can you draw me a rough sketch? Not so bad, right? Okay, why don't you guys try number 4 on your own? All right, guys, first thing, did you find a GCF? 2x. All right, so we have 2x plus, 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. Okay, so now we're down to a quadratic, which we know how to factor. What are your signs? Plus and minus. Options for A, 2 and 1, so 2x and 1x. Options for C, 1 and 5. Good. If you check that, yep, my signs are backwards. All right, so you should have factored like that. Set each one equal to 0. Now this threw some people. 2x equals 0. How would you solve that for x? Good. 0 divided by anything is 0, not 2. A lot of people want to tell me it's 2. Well, that's dividing by 0. This would be 0 cookies giving to 2 friends. So I have 0 cookies. I'm going to give up to you and you. How many do you get? 0. I don't have any cookies to give you. All right, what do you get for an answer here? Good, that's positive 1/2. And this would give me just -5. Just -5. All right, so if we draw a rough sketch, bless you. All right, rough sketch, I have a point at 0, 1/2. I got really close. And -5? What's my end behavior? What's it look like? Squiggly up. So roughly it's going to come through here. I don't know what it really looks like, but there you go. Is that kind of what it looks like? No, sweet. All right, how are we feeling about all this? You have a headache, all right. All right. What happens when they get a little bit harder? Can we figure them out? So number 5, again, let's take out this. We'll set it equal to 0. What would the GCF be on number 5? Good, 3x squared. That's 16x 63. Check my mental math. Am I good? It's a Friday. I'm tired. All right, so I'm down to quadratic, so let's go ahead and try to factor that even further. What are my signs? Good. Options for A, x and x. How about C? Good, 7 and 9. Good. So what are your answers? All right, so she said 0, 7, and 9. If you guys agree, disagree? You disagree. Why? You're right. She's like, wait a minute. There should be 4 answers. There should be 4 answers. You only listed 3. What's the other one? It's another 0. Technically, it's like plus or minus 0, which it's just 0. But it shows up twice. All right, good question. She's like, well, wait, I can't go through that point twice, so what does the graph look like? Grab your graphing calculators. Let's go there with this. That's going to give us a better idea. It will not go flat, so to speak. Something definitely happens, though. And I don't know if you guys caught when we did the hide and seek or activity where you found the graphs, the very first one on that one, that same answer showed up twice. I don't know if you caught that on that one too. See what happens. Okay. Make sure you don't type the whole thing as an exponent. All right, let's take a look at this graph. All right. Are we okay that it definitely goes through 7 and 9? What's happening at 0? Let's change our window so it's not so like we can't see what's really going on there. So go to window. Instead of looking from -10 to 10, let's maybe look from like -1 to 1 so you can see what's going on. So go ahead and change. I'm just going to hit my delete key on the 0 to change that. Right? So I just changed my x's from -1 to 1. So I can I want to see what's happening at 0. But when you look at it maybe a little closer so you can see what's happening. Does it go through the 0? It's like it bounces, right? It goes down and like kisses it just a little bit, and then it comes back up. It never actually crosses. Every time an answer shows up twice, it'll do that. Cool, right? What if the same answer showed up 4 times? It would still look like that. If it showed up 6 times, it would look like that. What's the pattern here? But what's my pattern of what makes it bounce? Evens. If the same answer shows up an even number of times, typically it's 2 for what we're doing, but if the same answer shows up an even number of times, it like bounces off of that number. Bounces. My window, I just changed from -1 to 1 on my X's. That way I wasn't looking so wide, I was just looking that one little spot. Yeah, it's the only thing I changed, from -1 to 1. But isn't that kind of cool though? It bounced off of it. It's because the answer showed up twice. No one else is amazed by that? I think it's cool. All right. It does 3 times. That's a good question. If it shows up 1 time, what does it do? It crosses it. So based on what we just talked about with the evens, what happens if it shows up 3 times? It should still cross it. Even bounces, odd crosses. So make yourself a note here, guys. So we have this in our notes because it's going to happen time and time again. If the same answer appears an even number of times, not if the answer is even, but if it shows up an even number of times. So that answer is listed twice, listed 4 times, listed 6 times. The graph bounces off of that point. So maybe even draw yourself a little sketch so we don't lose track of what we're talking about. So there's the 9, bless you. There's 7, and since 0 showed up twice, well, first, end behavior, it's even and positive. What's that look like? End behavior is going to be a smiley face, so I know my end should end like that. So it's going to come down, bounce off of this, and come back, and then it's going to go down and back up through this. Thank you. Say that again. At 0, instead of going through it, like it went through at 7 and went through it at 9, it literally just came down, touched it, and then went right back up. It never like went below the x-axis. It just kind of jumped off of it, bounced off, kissed it, whatever you want to call it. This is new. All right, why don't you guys try number 6? It's all right, guys. Let's go ahead and talk through it. Let's factor it first. All right, so let's talk about this together, okay? I know some of you are frustrated, bless you. All right, so GCF, 5x squared. So we're left with 3x squared plus x minus 4. All right, so then we can factor this further because you're down to quadratic. So we have 1 plus, 1 minus. Options for A, 3x and 1x. Options for C, you can go 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. I'm going to go 1 and 4 just because I wrote mine backwards from the way you wrote it. So it's 3. My signs are backwards. There we go. So there it is factored. Bless you. So what does x equal? What do you get from baby brother? 0, 0. Right? Because it's an x squared. This gives me, and this one gives me positive or negative? Negative 4 over 3. Okay. So since if I'm going to graph this, where's negative 4 over 3? That's negative 1 and 1. Okay, it changed. Negative 1 and 1/3. If you're going to graph and actually plot a point, yeah, I need to know where that's at. All right. So if I ask you to draw a rough sketch, bless you again. All right, I know it's going to go through 0. What's it going to do at 0? It's going to bounce because that answer showed up twice. I have 1 and then negative 1 1/3, so roughly somewhere in there. Again, we're sketching, so it doesn't have to be exact. So let's talk about what it looks like. We learned about end behavior yesterday. It is even and positive, so it's going to be a smiley face. Now, when I say it's a smiley face, that means the ends are going up. It doesn't mean it's beautifully round in the middle. Right? You can get all kinds of craziness in there, but I know my ends are pointing up. So I'm going to start by my end pointing up, And I know it goes through this point. Is it going to go through 0? No, it's going to just come up and kiss it, right? And come back down? It does look like a W, and then it's got to come back up. Look where my ends are. They're pointing up like they should be. Now, what goes on in between? You know, that can change depending on what the problem looks like. That one looks like a W. Think about turning points that we talked about yesterday. Turning points is the degree minus 1. What was the degree? 4 minus 1, 3. How many turning points did we find? 1, 2, 3. We're all kinds of craziness today. All right. So we're going to save the writing for Monday, but fast forward to the very end on the repeated zeros. And again, we just talked about some of this. This is not hard. I just want to make sure we're covered. For your homework assignment tonight, some of them are given to you where you don't have to factor them. Like that one right there. Do you see how that's already in factored form? Right? This example, it's already in your parentheses. It's already factored. Okay? So if I asked you what are the zeros, or what are the answers, you would tell me x equals, what would you get here? Positive 3 over 2. This would give you, and that's a positive 3. So you have some on homework tonight that are already factored. Don't try to like multiply everything back together. It's already factored. Just be happy, okay? That should be easier for you. So where does it bounce? It's going to bounce off of 3. If you would graph that one, it would bounce off of 3. What? The zeros are 3 over 2, 3, and 3. Zeros is another word for answers. So like if you would graph this, again, let's talk about rough sketch. So what's 3 halves? Where's that? That's 1.5. So 1.5, and then 3, and it's going to bounce off of that, right? Because it showed up twice, so I know it's going to bounce. What's the end behavior? Do we know? How many x's do you have up there? How many answers did you get? 3. We know that the degree is equal to how many answers you get. So this is going to be cubic, right? Because there's 3 answers. You guys okay with that so far? So what does a cubic one look like? Smiley face, sad face, squiggles. This is a squiggly one. Is that going to be squiggly up or squiggly down? At any point, do you have a GCF pulled out that's negative? No. So that means it's positive. So this is going to be a squiggly up. Okay, so think about squiggly up. So it starts down. Which one does it bounce off of? 3. So it's going to start down, it's going to come up, it's going to come down, and it's going to bounce off of 3 and just come back up. So how many times is 3 a 0, or how many times is 3 an answer? It'd be twice. Yeah, so 2 times, which we've already talked about. So that tells you it will bounce. What are the zeros of f of x equals x to the 4th minus 6x cubed plus 9x squared? Is that one already factored for you? No. So what do you have to do with that one? Factor it. Set that equal to 0. Good. X squared is your GCF. So x squared minus 6x plus 9. Can you factor that further? It'd be x minus 3, or I want to talk about this both ways. I'm glad you said it that way. We can think of it either way, right? So if I asked you to solve, what are your answers for x? Good. Baby brother is 0, 0, because it's x squared. 3 and 3. So what's going to happen on your graph? It's going to bounce off of both of them. So is it a squiggly? Go back to the original. It is even and positive, which means it's a smiley face one. So let's talk about the sketch of the graph. We know it's going to be smiley face, and we know it bounces off of both, right? Because how many times did it show up? Twice. It showed up twice. So it means it bounces off of both. Come down, it's going to bounce off of this one, and it's going to come down and bounce off of that one. Now, you may get some on your homework tonight where it's already factored for you, but it looks more like this. Do you see how this says 2? It means I have 2 of that answer. Okay? People mess those up, and I don't know why. So, like, if I gave you y equals x squared, x minus 3 cubed, and x plus 2 squared. So what would your answers be? You'd say x equals talking about the graph. Does it bounce off of any of them? It doesn't bounce off 3. There's 3 of them. So it would bounce off of zeros, because how many times did it show up? Twice. Twice is even. Does it bounce off the 3s? No, because there's an odd number of them. Yep, it would go straight through. Yep, it would go straight through those 3s. Okay? So let's talk about the graph. All right, so we know it's going to have 0, 3, and -2. Okay? Let's talk about the end behavior. How many answers did we get? How many answers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is a 7th degree because there are 7 answers. Is 7 even or odd? It's odd. So is it a squiggle or a smiley face, sad face? It's a squiggle. Is it squiggly up or squiggly down? Squiggly up because it's positive, right? None of this has negatives in front of the whole thing. So it's a squiggly up. And I know it's going to bounce off of 0 and -2. So I'm going to come up here. It's going to bounce. It's going to come up and bounce off of 0 again. And then it's going to come back up again. 7th degree, how many turning points could it have? It could have 6. Degree minus 1. This could have 6 turning points. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. It could have 6, though. So there could be things going on that I don't see. So that just took factoring and everything we did yesterday and the last couple of days, and we just put it all together. Oh, yeah. If I was graphing it, it couldn't go through the 2 from the top because of what we know the end behavior should be. Okay. Right now? I am. Take your pick on what you want to work on. Hey guys, real quick. You are going to have an assignment on this where you're going to have to factor and draw me a sketch of a graph. That's what your homework is tonight. They're not crazy hard ones like this. Also, IXL is due when? The 10th, which is next Wednesday. Next Wednesday.